Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll start this Menachot daf Kuf Aleph. We are going to begin on Kuf Amid Beis by the new Mishnah, new Parak. So we're going to see the difference, as we've seen many times before, the difference between Kedushas HaGuf, the higher level of sanctity, versus Kedushas Damim. So, HaMenachos, as well as Menasachim, when it comes to libations, Shenitmu, let's say they became tummy, so it depends. Actually, koch b'kli, before it was put into a kli sharis, and Rashi says, lo kitchi kedushas aguf, el kedushas damim, it only had the lower sanctity of kedushas damim, so yesh lehem pidyon. The reality is you're able to redeem them. And in fact, that is what you're supposed to do. However, mishik dishu b'kli, ein lehem pidyon. Once it's already reached the higher level of kedushas aguf, no longer are you able to redeem it, even after it became tameh. And then the Mishnah concludes, Ophos, birds, eitzim, wood, v'lavayna, and kli sharis, mishenitmu, all these things when they became tameh, ein lehen pidyon, there is no pidyon. Shlo nemar pidyon el behema, says Rashi. Shlo nemar pidyon b'kedushas aguf el behema ba'alos mum. It's only if the animal has a bal mum. Then we say, okay, fine, it's a bal mum, so then you can redeem it. However, when it comes to anything which is kedushas aguf, other than behema, in which becomes, let's say, tameh, then there's no eitzah pidyon. Says the Gemara, so this is an interesting thing. The Mishnah says that when is it paida? You're paida when the mincha and the sachim are tameh, which is mashma. If it was not tameh, you couldn't be paided. Shmuel says that no, when it comes to menachos and the sachim, even if they were tahor, you could still be paided at that point, because it hasn't taken upon itself kedushas aguf, so you can be paided even while it's tahor, not just when it becomes tameh. So my timer, kamad deloi kachi b'kli kedushas damim ninhu. Kedushas damim niftin, because what's the difference if it's tameh or tahor? The reality is, it hasn't achieved kedushas aguf, and it hasn't achieved kedushas aguf, you can be paided. What's the difference if it's tameh or tahor? Well, so the problem is v'hanitmu tanan. Our Mishnah says tameh. So the truth is, hu adin dafka dolo nitmu. As we said, when it comes to things which are only kedushas damim, you could be paided not just when they're tameh, but even if they're not tameh. So why is our Mishnah mentioned tameh? So I did a kabbalah mishnah seifa mishi kidshu b'kli, that once it's sanctified in a kli ein lehen pidyon, they feel nitmu nami lo, that even after it became tummy, you still can't be paided. So therefore, tananami reisha shenitmu actual kitchvakli. In other words, the reisha is really labdafka. We only mention the reisha agav the seifa. So the reality is, the reisha when it comes to menachos and the sachim, it doesn't make any difference. Even if it's tahar, you can still be paided. Now pshita kedushas agufnin, who now I can understand. The seifa, it sounds pretty obvious. If it's kedushas aguf, obviously it can't be paided. It's hoyo balmum ikri tameh. We know balmum in the Torah, as we'll see later on, is called tameh. Tameh nami kabalmum nami. So therefore, we would say that the just like a balmum, we know a balmum you could be paided even if it's kedushas aguf. That's the one thing you can be paided. So maybe it's the same thing that tameh also you could be paided. If you have got the kadosh. Kedushas aguf ki nafal be mum. Once it gets a mum, mifruk. So hainami lifruk. So maybe also over here the fact that it became tummy, you could redeem it. Kamash Shmuel the lav ki hay tame karya rachmana l'balmum. We're not really calling a balmum tame to be able to make this quantum leap to be able to say, oh, so that means. You could be paid it, just like you can be paid a behema, so too you can be paid this. The kli sharis lo ashchan the mifruk. We never find that a kli sharis you can redeem. Ubalmum, fine. Ubalmum hecha ikre tameh. So at least in the Havamina, we said that maybe since balmum was like is tameh, so therefore just like balmum, you could be paida, so too maybe tummy could be paida. How do we see this? This sign. The pasuk says, "Dim kol behema tameya," with regard to all the non-kosher animals. You're not makrib them as a carbon. So bebali mumin sheniftin a kosmadaber. Actually, the pasuk is talking not about really tameh, but we're talking about an animal that has a mum. So Atar Rabbi Mum Sheniftu. Are you talking about a Baal Mum that can be redeemed? No, Eno Elo Babahema Tamea Mamish. Maybe we're talking a non-kosher animal. So Kashu Aimer Be'ima Behema Tamea. It already talks about that beferish. Ufa de Berkacha Hari Behema Tamea Mura. So how many what do we do with the pasuk being called Behema Tamea? But by Mumin Sheniftu Hakas Medamer. So therefore we see there's a link between Tuma and Baal Mum. So Yochel Yiftu Al Mum Oiver. So we say if it's a Baal Mum, so then you can be poided. What if it's a Mum Oiver, which is it's not really a Mum, it's currently a Mum, but it's going to dissipate in time by itself. So something that could basically never happen. It's almost like a devastation matirin. So right now you can't be makar, but tomorrow, because the mumoiver, so then it doesn't fall into that category. So only a regular Baal Mum, in which there's no hope for this animal, that you could be poided. However, mumoiver, you're not allowed to. So Maisev Rav Huna bar Manayach. The Mishnah said ha'ofos va'etzim v'havayna v'kli sharis, all these things which have the level of kedushas aguf shinitmu only when it's tamei ein lehen pidyon. So shalom naimer pidyon el bebehema, because anything else which has kedushas aguf we can't be poided, with the exclusion of an animal which has a Baal Mum. So bishul ofos, I can understand ofos kedushas aguf ninhu. Since it's kedushas aguf, so therefore, says Rashi, the hein atzmin kriven, then srichin kedushas kli. V'lo nemer bebehema el eitzim lavayna v'kli sharis lifraku. I understand, why can't you just redeem those, right? So el must be mishum de tahirin ba'alma ein niftin. It must be that when something is tahar, you can't redeem it. So therefore, this is actually kasha on Shmuel, because Shmuel says you can redeem it even while it's tahar. But over here, it's mashma not. So how do we understand this? V'haninami afgav denitmu b'tahirin kit tahirim damu. The eitzim lavayna lav b'nei, some say ashvei uchloninhu. It's not; these are non-edible foods. El-chibas hakaidish mishavlu ha'oichel. It's only el-chibas kaidish to show this higher level of sanctity that we consider this have these dinim. The eitzim, when it comes to wood, however, kamadolai mashvilhu agrees in, as long as you didn't chop it into fine, perfect logs, loi miskashri. So lavana nami. So when it comes to lavana nami, kamadolai kidshu b'klisharis. If you didn't put the lavana into a klisharis, lo miskashra. Klisharis nami hoya b'islei lahu tahara b'mikveh. So your answer is actually we could hold like Shmuel, that typically when it comes to anything you can be poided even when it's tahar. So how come our Mishnah doesn't say that here? So Vahani, when it comes to these cases, Mishum do shchichihu. It's because they're not common. Says Rashi, V'yahavilhu pidyon, if you would redeem them to hirin while they're tahar, parikul chuan, it'll go to chuan. Masulu mishkache gizborim midiachrina. So only the Chachamim said that you can't redeem it Rabbanan, as they are very difficult to replace. V'hani mishum do shchichu, because there's some non-common, so therefore that's a problem. Therefore we say you can't be poided when it's tahar, because otherwise you'll end up being poided, and we're going to run out. We're not going to find new replacements. So therefore we're a little bit more strict when it comes to these things. So Bishlam Lavayim Kli Sharis Lo Shchichi, I understand this is not very common. El Eitzim Mishkach Shchichi, it's just wood. No Eitzim Nami. All Eitzim is also not so common. Kivandim Remarko Eitz Shenim Saboy Talas Pasul Legamizbech Hilkach Lo Shchichi. The reality is, even if you find a single bug in that log, yeah, you can find logs, just go to a forest. But if you have to find wood in which is free from any insects, that may not be as easy to find. Okay, question 3. Shmuel, the Menachot of the Sachim Tahirin Niftin, right? Even while Tahar, so Madua Imkin Eitzim Lavayna Ein Niftin. So then, why can't you redeem them? I thought you said you could. So you said that really normally you could, but because these things are not shchiach, and if we would redeem them to Chulin, we're not going to find, the Gizbor will not find others like this, L'tzarech Gavaya. And therefore, for that reason, we end up saying no. TB23. Elu Gimel Devarim Eno Niftin Klal Kashem Tahari Mishum Delo Shchichi. Eitzim Lavoina Kli Sharis. And that sounds pretty correct. That's TB23. Let's see. Right? So Bishlam Lavoina V'Kli Sharis, and also Eitzim, right? Okay. Alright, so that's TB23. TA 20. Same question, basically. And of course the answer is Eitzim, Lavaina, and Kli Sharis. Okay. Alright, let's keep moving. So, Amra Papa. Shmuel, if Shmuel heard the sign that we learned, it says Hamatvis Tamimim Lebedekabayas, someone who grabs hold of Tamim animals for the sake of Bedekabayas, for the upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash. So Ein Paidanaiso Elo Mizbech. You cannot be paided except for the Mizbech, says Rashi. You can only sell it for the sake of karbanos. If it's fit for the mizbech, then it's got to go on the mizbech. The Afagav the kedushas damim ninhu, which is a big chiddush. Even though these animals are only kedushas damim, a nifdin, we still don't want you to be pointing on them. Hoidov v'taharim heim, they're pure. So havi haderbei. So then Shmuel, fine. Havi haderbei. You would think, therefore, Shmuel would have retracted. He heard this and he's not retracting. Lav Itmar, did we not learn Hasam over there? Because it's so hard to find. We don't want to redeem it while it's tahar, because then we won't find the other ones. So Hachinami Kivan the Shchichi, because it is common. Mumin de Pasli bebehema, the Afil bedukish ba'ayin nami pasli. It's very easy to find a psul in an animal, because even if there's a cataract in the eye, it's possible. Hilkach lo shchichi, therefore, this animal also with a mum, without a mum rather, is lo shchichi. So this is something which is not so common either. So that's the reason why we're strict not to be pointed. Okay. Now, if Kahana, who as we're going to see, argues with Shmuel, or no, Tamein Niftin to Ein Niftin, which sounds a lot like our Mishnah, right? That is only once the Kedushas Damim became Tamei, then you can be poided, not once Tahar. V'chein Rabbi Yishia Tamein Niftin to Ein Niftin. Ikadi Amri some say Rabbi Yishia feel Tahari Niftin, like Shmuel. Rabbi Lezer Amri Kulan Tamein Niftin to Ein Niftin, which again is like or Kahana. Chutz Me'aseres Ha'efa Shel Minchas Chayte, that even when it's tahar, we will allow you to redeem. That, so Rashi explains why. Shahari Amr Torah Mechatasai Al Chatasa. So let's look at this Rashi. Shafil Tahara Niftis. Shari Amr Torah Bekarman Olav Yarid Mechatasa Al Chatasai Bekisva. O Seira, or Turim Ksiv, Mechatasa Mincha Ksiv, Al Chatasa Darshinan, Lohachi Ksiv, Mechatasa Bekimsa, Damashma Mixas Chatasai, Shim Haya Asher, if you were wealthy, because she tame, we are tame, Mikdash, Vehefresh Mois, Lakiso, Seira, Va'ani Yavi Mixas Tame Turim, Mincha, Misharchun, Lohachi Ksiv, Gabi Siris Eva, Al Chataso Damashma Yosef. She'im hoya'ani v'hifresh asir so'efa v'ha'isher yiftem v'yosef alav mois v'yavi kisvo seira. Okay, Ayin Rashi. So again, we actually have a machlokas. Is the Mishnah exact? That is only when it's tamei, or do we say even like Shmuel like it's tar? So Shari Amar Tari mechataso al chataso. Amar Vayisha Shemaiti Pigol b'mincha. Rav Shemin and Matamatumas Oichlin. That when it comes to Pigel, a person had an improper thought regarding a mincha. According to Rav Shimon, ein matami tumas oichlin. Says Rashi. Rav Shimon says later in kol asr b'hana. This is asr b'hana einu matami tumas oichlin. So it's not matami tumas oichlin because it's not something you can eat. It's asr b'hana. Okay. Did not. How do we see this is the case? So we have a bunch of cases of things that are asr b'hana, such as the arul of a klai kerem. As we continue to Talmud Beis. V'shor haniskol, as Rashi says, sheshachtu l'achar shenik b'dinoi. You shechted after the Gemara din. Din niskol mamish, matamatumas chamura dinaveli. Okay. Anyway, v'shor niskol egla arufa v'tzipari masera peter chamor basa b'cholav. All these things, as enumerated in Masatzis Kedushin as well, are asr b'hana. Kulam metamin tumas oichlin. They're tummy tumas oichlin, even though they can't eat it. You can't eat it because it's tummy. It's asr b'hana. Rav Shimon over kulan e metamin tumas oichlin. Rav Shimon says no, they cannot become a metamin tumas oichlin because they're not. They're inedible. Umaydu Rav Shimon b'bas b'cholav shenitma tumas oichlin. Now when it comes to bas b'cholav, if it became tamei, it can be metamin tumas oichlin. Hayam b'haisel shasa kaisher. So we say that when it comes to the shasa kaisher, which is bas b'cholav, because at one point it was mutter until you mix them together, so it says the shasa kaisher. So we say that when it became tamei, it develops tumas oichel. My time with Rav Shimon, kapasik is michol oichel sheyochel, anything you eat. So oichel shati yochel hachilo lacherim. Other people can eat it kar yochel. Oichel shiati yochel hachilo lacherim in a kar yochel. If it's food that other people can't eat, then it's not oichel. So baha pigol b'mincha nami oichel shiati yochel achil acherimu. So when it came to pigol or mincha, and you have that machshava, so it therefore now becomes food that no one can eat. Now ihachi basar b'chalav nami. You should say the same thing. Typically oichel the oichel shiati yochel achil acherimu. The sign of Shimon Yehuda Omer Mishum Rav Shimon bas b'chalav aser b'achila. You can't eat it, however, mutter b'hana. According to him, you can actually get hana from it. Shnemer, ki am kadosh ata Hashem l'kecha, l'ustavash gedi b'chalav imay. So, halon oimer, then it says, the anshi kodesh tiyun li. Ubas b'sad treiful l'seochu. So, malu halon, so why is it mentioned in the pasuk? It's talking about, Basu basada treiful l'soichelu. Malhon asmachilu motamahana, avkan asmachilu motamahana. So we're answers chad velim kamer. One in that other statement. Chada the oichel shati yochel achilu acher. The bas b'chol is something that you can't eat, and other people can't eat either. Who? But oid l'didei nami haisel shasa kaisher. You can say it has a shasa kaisher. Meiser Shimon Omer yesh noiser shehu metamid tumas oichlin. There's sometimes nicer could be metamid tumas oichlin, even though you can't eat it. The yesh noiser shein metamid tumas oichlin. It's all ketzad. Long left nezerika. Let's say it was left overnight. And metamid tumas oichlin. Lo acher zerika. After you did the zerika, then metamid tumas oichlin. So the Rashi, long left nezerika lo haisel shasa kaisher. This is what it's saying. If it never had a shasa kaisher, that's not matamah tumas oichlin. However, it had one moment that it was allowed, then it is matamah tumas oichlin. Upigo bein kadashim kadashim bein kadashim kalam in a matamah tumas oichlin, no matter like by karbanos. So pigo b'mincha matamah tumas oichlin. However, the mincha offering is matamah tumas oichlin. So lukasha kan shaisel shasa kaisher kan shaisel shasa kaisher. So we said, if it has never had a shasa kaisher, so then it's not matamah tumas oichlin to acherim. However, if it had a shasa kaisher, then yes. Hey chadami, dul haisel shasa kaisher. What does it mean? It must mean that the shinu b'mechuber, that you were makdish it as a mincha even though it's attached to the ground. So live for kinu, so that you should still be able to redeem it. So anichal hachlish nidei Rabbi Oishia that tamei niftin tahar a niftin, that while it's tahar, it's mechuber to the ground, which means it's tahar. You can't be paid. So shaper el hachlish nidei Rabbi tahar niftin. So if for kinu, you can redeem it now. So hashnam mia lo parak v'kivan the boy parak lay shamli Rav Shimon Yemer kol aimed liftos kapadoy dami. Anything in which is standing to be redeemed, it's ki'u like it was redeemed. So therefore, it's like it has a shasa kaisher. The sign of Shimon Aimer para, when with regard to the paraduma, metam and tumas oichlin. So we say that's a matama tumas oichlin as well. It says Rashi, Afan gav the asura bahana. You can't eat it. Nonetheless, Moed Rav Shimon the matama tumas oichlin. So a paraduma is the Yomer Shlakish Omer Hayi Rav Shimon para nifnis al gam marachta. We see that you could redeem it. This animal. The question is, what type of shasa kosher was there on this animal? There was never a shasa kosher because it's always also bahana. So why do we say if it has a shasa kosher then it's matama tumas oichlin? It's not true. Even when by paraduma we find that even though it's the din is matam that about the other people, it's we see pumfakert, as it says over here, par matama tumas oichlin. So haki hashta bishlam para. When it comes to the paraduma, oimenis liftaisi. It's an animal that's fit to be redeemed. In other words, she'im matza cheres na himena. If you find a better paraduma, it's hard enough to find one, find a nicer one, mitzvah liftaisa, then it's a mitzvah to redeem it. Elahani menachos mitzvah liftaisa, there's no mitzvah to redeem it. So when it comes to the paraduma, it makes sense, right? There's a reason to be paided, because you could sometimes find a better one, but there's no such din when it comes to a mincha. Question 4. By pigel. It's not matamatum oichlin. So ma'ishno Rabbi Yisha the menachos mipara the mishona matzah liftos off of the al gavi marachta havilei shasa kaisher matami tumas oichlin Rabbi Shimon. So how do we understand again the shita that Rabbi Shimon says is not matama tumas oichlin? So how do we understand the paraduma? So either he holds that by nesachim and mincha tahirin while it's pure cannot be redeemed, only when it's tamei. Oshani para di matzah yafa mitzvah lifdaisai mashin kin menacha. So he said there's a mitzvah to redeem the paraduma. There's no mitzvah to ever redeem a mincha. Okay, fine. So v'halan lifnei zrika the mitzvah mizrika. It's a mitzvah to sprinkle the boy zarak. If you want, you could sprinkle. But katani the ein matamatum zoichlin. So hakamai skina shul haisa shois biyoyim u'mizrika. Let's say we're talking about a time you didn't have enough time to sprinkle. It's like right before shkia. Double haisa shas shois biyoyim. If you did have some time, my matamatum zoichlin. So I did anistilon la'achar zrika matamatum zoichlin lifnei bidida. Make argument within the thing itself. And say b'medabar morim shul haisa shois biyoyim. Double haisa shas biyoyim when there's time. So therefore, but we don't mention that distinction. When it says Hakanami Kamer, that's actually what it's saying. Lon Kadim Shira Lazrika before it's fit for the Zrika, and Lacher. Lacher Shira Lazrika, once it's fit for the Zrika, Metamatumas Oichlin. Vaha Pigol, Bam Kaddish Halim, Mitzvah Mizrika. It's a mitzvah to sprinkle, as we continue to kuf Beis and Aleph. The boy zark, if you want, you could sprinkle. But my love, the pigel bezrika. But I thought we said it should be matamatum oichlin. So how do we understand this? Well, the pigel b'shchita. Actually, when it comes to pigel, his mistake was that it was in not the zrika, not when it comes to kol oim the lizard kazar dami. It's actually focusing on the shchita. Of a pigel b'zrika, my hakanami the matamatum oichlin. The fact that again, even with zrika, it's still matamatum oichlin. At a time, so ad is the pigel b'minacha matamatum oichlin live in b'dida and say b'medavar morim the pigel b'shchita. Of a pigel b'zrika matamatum oichlin. So pigel b'minacha isrichlei. We need the pigel in our case. The afagav the pigel b'kmitza the kaimitz b'minacha k'shchita damai. So even let's say it was not so much. If you'll hacham tamatumas oichlin, however, haisel shasa kaisher mikaro. Rav Ashi, Amrisel shmeisa kamida Rav Nachman. Afil tema lon mamish the slept. Afil tema the pigel bezrika. The boy park. He can just redeem it. Amar boy havi zarek lo amrinan. Okay, we're gonna stop there. Let's maybe see a question. TA 24. Pigel bebehema of Shimon oichel imata yochel achil acherim im matami tumas oichlin. Pigel bebehemer of Shimon, the oichel shiati yochel achiloi, lacherim in a matama. Ha'imatama tumas oichlin. So basically, I think this is right. I just wrote, it's totally if there's a shas a kosher, right? If it has a shas heter or shas ha kosher, so then it's matama tumas oichlin. Otherwise, not. Okay, so that's TB24, and I'll just put it kind of like randomly over here. Oh, TB24. Okay. TA 21. Hamevi Asham Tolim Benedla Shulchata. Okay.